Well, hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to M4L Academy. My name is Missy Karwowski, Director of M4LA, and I'm so glad that you've joined us today. This is our final campus briefing of our Back to School series. In our campus briefings, we bring in experts to help demystify the complex issues, politics, and policies impacting kids, schools, and your rights as a parent. So far this month, we've talked about curriculum red flags, important considerations for school safety, both online and in the real world. And just last week, we talked with SLF about knowing your rights, including opt-outs and viewpoint discrimination at school board meetings and more. If you missed any of those events, you can always check out the recordings at our website, m4lacademy.org, or on the Moms for Liberty YouTube channel. Now, I'm particularly excited for today's conversation as it is so near and dear to the heart of Moms for Liberty. Is being engaged in your child's education something you're born with or something you grow into? Well, today we're talking with a mom who's done both. She's led a movement and stayed deeply involved in her own kids' schools. Yes, today we're talking about being involved and getting engaged in school, that is. Our guest is a powerhouse example of both of these. In fact, if you look them up in the dictionary, you might just see her picture there. Tina Descovich is a dedicated advocate for students and parental rights, with a strong record of service at both local and national levels. She co-founded Moms for Liberty in 2021, a grassroots organization that now spans over 300 chapters across 48 states, empowering parents to defend their rights. Her leadership has earned her national recognition, including an appointment to the Florida Commission on Ethics by Governor Ron DeSantis and Fox News' Most Valuable Patriot Award. Tina's background in communications and strategic planning, along with her experience on the Brevard County School Board, reflects her thoughtful and effective approach to advocacy. Despite her public profile, Tina remains grounded in her passion for liberty and her commitment to families, drawing strength from her role as a mother of five, which is arguably the most important role, I would say, out of all of those. So welcome to the show, Tina.
It's great to be with you, Missy.
I am particularly excited for this conversation. It is the first time that we have had a chance to feature you on M4L Academy. So that alone is, to me, kind of monumentous. I'm very excited. Before we get started, I want to lay a little bit of groundwork because the topic that we're talking about today is involved and engaged. I see these as two slightly different things. Involved, that's where you start to think of going to school lunches or maybe helping out during the classroom parties, etc. Of course, helping with schoolwork. And engaged, I see more going to school boards and looking into curriculum and potentially running for school board. So I have to ask, were you an involved mom from the beginning, or did that come later once you became engaged in the community?
I would say that I was a highly involved mom from the moment my oldest, who's now 24, entered kindergarten. Probably a little overly involved. At one point, I was like volunteer of the year at their elementary school and logged over 10,000 volunteer hours. So
Wow.
definitely involved.
Very involved. And were you a stay-at-home mom at the time, or were you working at that time?
So I have worked since I was 15 years old. I did stay home after my second was born for a brief period, but I always did consulting work or took side jobs, or I was always still working at some level. I just have this desire to produce, I think, because I started so young working.
Yeah, that makes sense. What was your first step into school engagement then? So thinking back to the idea of starting maybe on the civic side, when did that start for you?
So back to the involvement, like the first step of involvement, I was just thinking about it as you were saying it. And I thought, what was my first step of involvement? Because when my youngest started kindergarten, I was still working full time. And I think that's why I was so involved, because I was overcompensating from the guilt of being a full-time working mom. And any mom out there knows it's this balance of doing things for yourself, doing, working, taking time to relax, and then being a mom and being a wife. There's so many things pulling you in each way. And sometimes, you carry around this mom guilt because you feel like you're not giving your kids enough, or your job enough, or your volunteer work enough, or your husband enough. And so I do remember showing up in his kindergarten class and telling his kindergarten teacher, what can I do at home, or what projects, I can't make copies for you during the day. And I knew the things that she needed in the classroom. And so she was so great about giving me jobs. I think they were learning, this is before they pulled cursive out of the classrooms. And so she had given me some cards that she wanted me to create, and with letters on them so that the kids could trace them, and some different things. And so she gave me projects that I could be involved in the classroom, but not have to be present all the time.
That is exactly the kind of thing I was hoping we would hear about, actually, because sometimes that you're hitting the nail on the head that when you're a working mom, working parent, and you still want to be involved, it can be very challenging to be able to feel like you're able to still contribute because you might have a job during the day when this normal school day is. So I love that tip for how parents can get involved as well. When did you make the step over into getting engaged with the school system?
So I'm not sure, the line of involvement and engagement, but it definitely grew over time. At one point, I attended a couple PTO meetings, and the PTO was kind of dying down in our school. It seemed like at one point they had like 30 or 40 members, and then I was still showing up to the meetings, and there was 3 or 4 of us. And then the president, I think her child was moving out of the elementary school, and no one would take it over. And one mom took it over and she fought with everybody and she quit. Another mom took it over and it just didn't work out. And so there was this all call, like, please, is there anybody out there that'll run our PTO? And I remember the next morning, I was sitting around pondering, and I thought, oh, I know I can do this. At this point, I wasn't working full time. I was just doing some consulting work. And so I really felt prompted that I just needed to step in and do it. And it was quite remarkable. It was quite an experience. I just, like Tina fashion, I was all in. And a few of the teachers started calling it PTO 2.0 because immediately I had all these ideas about restructuring the PTO and making it an independent 501c3 from the school. And our playground was just condemned. And the principal had told me it would take up to 2 years to raise the money and work through the district to get it rebuilt. And I just was like, what? 2 years for a playground? This is unacceptable. I was like, my husband can go get a kit from Lowe's and throw it up on the playground at school. Oh boy, did I not have a clue what I was talking about. You just start digging around a little bit and you realize you've got to work through the district. There's all of the bureaucracy, there's paperwork, there's approval, there's playground grade everything, equipment, obviously, which I wasn't aware of at the time, all the way down to what mulch can be laid, and inspections by the school district, and safety officers that have to do all the things. And so the principal wasn't wrong when she said it would probably take 2 years, but I was one determined mom. And within 6 months, we had raised all the money needed, had it installed, and I understood what was going on at the district at that point because I understood the different departments and the magnitude of it and how bureaucratic it was. So I would say that was my first toe into, going from involved to engaged. And it was about building a playground.
That is incredible. Also, really highlights how so often there are parts of the school or just parts of really any business, I would say, that if you're not directly involved in it, you don't understand the ins and outs and the various steps in the process to get something completed. So it sounds like you just basically did some digging to find out these policies. Are there any tips or tricks you might give some suggestions on direction to take for parents when they're starting to get engaged like that, learning
I would
about
say
policies in their district?
I would say tenacity, because it's not easy. Districts, they say they want you involved, but it becomes very hard to get all the information and to understand all the information. And at every turn, I was told, no, 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 or that's going to take, twice as long as this, or, no one's ever done that, or just all of the roadblocks I feel like public education puts up. But at one point I turned in all the paperwork for after the playground was built. I turned in the paperwork to the district. I turned it into my principal, who then submitted it to the district. And I mean, it was 1 week. And this is all we're waiting for, because then they have to approve it and they send out the inspectors, and the playground's out there and the kids can now see the playground and they can't touch it until it's been inspected. And so, I got to the point where I learned where the district was located, and I would drive down there and I would just sit there. When is someone going to review our paperwork? When is someone going to review our paperwork? And so you have to have tenacity. You have to not give up. You have to keep digging, keep asking the questions. You can't get discouraged. You can't take no for an answer. And that goes on everything from, building a playground to curriculum questions about testing, your ability to opt out. I could talk for hours about how phase one for me was this playground, but that grew into, by the time my son got to middle school, me asking questions about standardized testing, got me involved then in policy at the state level, talking to my legislator. Like it just grew and grew. And I would say that the process never changed. When I started getting in policy at the middle school level, it was the same thing. No, we can't do that. No, you just don't understand, roadblocks everywhere, and you just have to keep going.
Okay, so now you've hinted at what has come next, which is this incredible organization of Moms for Liberty, where you're supporting parents all across and empowering parents all across the country. So take us through that next step in the process. What took you from school board member to starting a nonprofit that is countrywide?
You just made a big jump. I was just asking questions about standardized tests in middle school. It took another 4 years to get to the point where I was like, oh, I think I should run for school board. And so 4 years later, I ran for school board and won, and served here in Brevard County, Florida for 4 years, 2016 to 2020. In 2020, everybody knows what happens. It was a really challenging year to be a school board member. Schools were closed because of COVID. We were scrambling and working hard, 12 to 14-hour meetings sometimes, working on policies to open schools, procedures to open schools, deciding, you're going to mask or not mask, or the kid's going to be 6 feet apart, all of the things. Doctors and meetings and parents screaming and yelling and crying. And, it was so turbulent. And then I ran for re-election. Our elections here in Florida for school board are not with the general election. So it was in August. And in my county, which is a very red county, by the way, a radical liberal beat me. And so I lost my reelection. And I will say I beat her on election day and early voting, but she won in mail ballots. And it was really a wake-up call, not just for me, but for our entire community. And I was kind of left wondering what to do with all the information I had gathered and learned over the previous 4 years serving, what to do with my passion for supporting and helping children, for education, now that I was so deeply involved in that. And, Moms for Liberty was born out of that, out of me soul searching what to do next.
So coming next, I'm sure that you had absolutely no problems, right? You never got opposition. There was no one who ever fought back, and it just was a nice, easy path right to the top, right?
You mean when starting Moms for Liberty?
Yes.
Yeah, it was pretty rough right out the gate, more locally than anywhere else. I think those first few months. No, who am I kidding? We were probably 2 or 3 months old, and the national pushback had started on us. And it was really birthed out of here locally. The school board member that filled the seat that I was in and beat me in the election, she really felt like Moms for Liberty was created, or at least she perceived and kept saying verbally that Moms for Liberty was created just kind of to go after her or attack her, which wasn't the case at all. I didn't hold any ill will. I actually wished her well and tried to call her on election night. We didn't agree on issues, but our chapter here locally was very frustrated with where she stood on everything. And so it became this like pushback from her. But really a lot of radicals, coalesced around her. And so it started here in Florida, this push and pull between liberals and conservatives in the education arena. And she ended up, getting on MSNBC and some other news. And so it really pushed it nationally. the divide of the ideas, and then it just, it grew from there. And so, by 2021, I think most people know that the Biden administration came after us. He worked through Merrick Garland at the DOJ to create a threat tag for parents. There was a hotline. This was all built out under the Patriot Act to call if, parents were threatening at school board meetings, but people were calling them just for parents showing up at school board meetings. And so it really picked up a lot of media attention, definitely around the world, upset parents, big government coming after them. And so the pushback was just astronomical.
And that is clearly what I was expecting, or more what I meant. I very facetiously was saying you didn't face obstacles, of course. But that makes me wonder, though, because I think you have such a great story and so much encouragement to share, because it is very challenging when you become engaged and, geez, parents are, like you said, just starting to go to school board meetings and simply their attendance was receiving pushback. So when that happens, when we get this opposition, and it's not even often in simple conversation, but it comes through shouting and personal smears or intimidation and attacks. You personally, when you were on 60 Minutes and they twisted your words, and then recent events such as our amazing See You at the Library event, where many times there was all across the country, there were protests and people literally yelling at these parents just trying to go and read books. So when we're facing that opposition and others are refusing conversation and just being not very polite, how do you stay grounded in the mission? What advice do you have for parents and leaders who might feel discouraged?
I think you have to always go back to your why. Why are you doing this? For most of us, it's our children. For a lot of us, it's because we're standing for truth, and we think what's happening is wrong. We know what's happening is wrong. Even justice. A lot of times I think the left thinks they own the word justice, but a lot of these things that are happening are unfair, and they need to be stopped, a lot of these policies. And so if you go back to your why, again, ultimately probably your children or children across America, or your love of country and saving it and the importance of education, and like that can empower you, that can fuel you to push through when the attacks are coming, because an attack it's nothing. Moms always say sticks and stones break my bones. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names and faces will never hurt me. And we just need to remember that. Like, they can name call, they can do all the things, but your children are more important. The future of our country is more important.
That's exactly right. And I'm going to say, I personally see it slightly differently, because the reality is that names and faces can hurt my feelings, but it doesn't mean it has to hold me back or keep me down, or I'm not going to give it power to ruin my day and take away my joy, which, by the way, I love that is what we are known as joyful warriors, because that's exactly right. Maintaining joy through this when pursuing such an important goal. Okay, let's take it a little bit of a turn then. We've talked about how you stay strong and don't give up when things are going tough. But then how do you stay involved with your kids? Because, I mean, running a national organization is, just a little bit of time commitments that go into that. So give us some tips on how you stay involved with your kids in school.
Well, I only have one left in school. He's actually a senior this year. He just started his senior year. He can drive himself finally. So that has cut back on my time. But, last year he didn't have his license yet. And so I was still trying to be mom and be here in the office and work full time. And so I made a deal with myself that I would be focused in the morning on him and making him breakfast and doing the things, even though he was 16 years old. And I even drove him to school. And he has this app that he follows that has these daily messages that he likes to listen to, and I'd have him read it to me in the car, and we'd have a quality discussion every morning. In the afternoon, my husband would pick him up. So I was kind of MIA for a little bit there, where the old mom would have been there in the morning and in the afternoon. But family dinner is very important to our family. And so no matter how busy I am, if I'm in town and I'm here, we have family dinner. And most of the time, believe it or not, I cook. I do love to cook. The last 2 years, I've started ordering, for a while, we used HelloFresh, and now we use Home Chef, but, uh, we've started using these meal kits. So I still cook, but I don't have to think and get to the grocery store. It's, like, right there for me, and so that's a little tip and shortcut to making sure we get a home-cooked meal. But we sit around the table. I think it's very important. We talk about our day. We exchange ideas. On Sundays, we try to have a big family dinner. My older son and his wife come over too. We try to have game night. I may be traveling Monday through Wednesday or Wednesday through Saturday, but I'm just about always home on Sundays. And so, if nothing else, we try to focus in on that day.
That is so fantastic. And I want to reiterate this as a very well known idea that family dinner is important, but it really truly is. And in today's world, I think it's so easy between practices and activities and various extracurriculars and work and all these other commitments that take our attention to not put a focus on that. But kudos to you for doing that because that is massively important and does make such a big difference. I've personally seen a big difference in my kids when I do that. Although I give you a lot more credit than me because I do not like to cook. My husband is a chef, so I'm very spoiled and he cooks for me. I just eat. But then when he travels, we all kind of struggle a bit because I don't like to cook. But kudos to you.
Well, there's always takeout too. You could
Yes.
take it out and put it on a plate on the table. It's more about the time around the table. Although I find cooking, I have always included my kids in cooking. My 24-year-old, he does most of the cooking in their house now because I made him made him cook for so many years. He actually enjoys it. Even if they're just chopping or peeling the potatoes, it's really a time to also connect.
I agree. I do agree with that. So, what do your kids think about your work and what you do? Do they give you advice or feedback or tell you great job or not so much?
Yeah, it's interesting. They've always supported me, but also, I had them out knocking doors when I was running for school board both times, and I have toted them everywhere. My 17-year-old, when I was PTO president, he was not even in school yet. He was a baby. And, the poor kid, multiple times, I remember I would bring like a sleeping mat while I was at the school volunteering, and he'd be under the desk next to me, sleeping on the mat. And so I've toted them everywhere. They have experienced this from day one. They understand why I'm doing it. As far as I know of, they haven't been mortified yet by it, which is quite amazing because teenagers are very hard on their parents. The 24-year-old interned here and worked here for a while. Now he's out of college and has his own career, but he helps and support. And he's great to bounce ideas off of. The 17-year-old, I brought him to the last few national summits that we've had, and the one we had in Philadelphia with all the protesters. He kept sneaking out to go watch the protesters. He would just observe them. He found it kind of fascinating, I think.
I personally would find that also fascinating, a little terrifying, but and then even more so as mom, like, where is my child? Why are you watching these protesters? But probably was a very interesting experience, I would say, for him. So
Yeah,
let's
he says he doesn't like politics. The older one is involved even in his career now in politics, but the youngest one, he says he doesn't like politics, but he sure likes to have philosophical discussions about issues. So that's the most I can ask for.
Yeah, yeah. And just because he says he doesn't like politics now doesn't mean he's not going to in some way. Doesn't mean he's not aware of it, at least. I know that's something that I see with my children, and I encourage people in our situation. And when I say that, I mean someone who is very involved in politics and engaged work and in any way. Sometimes it's not for everyone, and that's okay. Your family can support you without necessarily wanting to go out and have those massive conversations, but just being supportive. Okay, just a fun question. What's your favorite way to unplug and recharge when you're not doing Moms for Liberty work?
When am I not doing Moms for Liberty work? Honestly, there's a couple things I like to do. One, the beach. We live not far from the beach. It is my happy place. I do not get there enough, but leaving the phone at home or in the car and putting my feet in the sand and the warm sun on my face is probably one of my happiest places. I take Sundays very seriously. I like going to church. I usually put my phone away for that or turn off, at least notifications for a couple hours. It's important to me to decompress on Sundays. And The other thing I like to do to decompress is just, I don't know, lay like a vegetable on the couch and turn on a Hallmark movie, which my husband hates those. But I just want like mindless joy, right? That's just usually boy meets girl, girl likes boy, and it moves on. And so I like to do that. As for hobbies, I like to exercise. And the only other hobby I have is genealogy, family history. I have the
Wow.
ancestry.com app on my phone, and when most people are playing games or something on their phone, I don't do that. I don't get any pleasure out of that. I literally chase the little leaves. If you have the Ancestry app, you get these little hints on a name in your tree, and it's a little green leaf, and it moves around like that when there's a new hint, and I just tap those and do family research.
That is a lot of fun. I think that is super interesting to I did very briefly do get involved with ancestry.com. Ended up getting distracted and never fully pursuing it, but it is really fascinating to learn more about your history. And I'm not surprised considering your involvement in support of the country and loving the country and patriotism and history that you enjoy that as well. That totally makes sense. So let's bring it back to folks that maybe want to just start getting involved themselves. Maybe we have some new parents or parents that aren't brand new parents, but they are just starting to get involved and engaged in their schools. Where would you recommend that they start?
So involved, start with the teacher. Uh, Absolutely, the teacher, just ask, how can I support? How can I help? Your Potentially your local PTO, or maybe the PTA. Sometimes the PTA has an agenda that isn't really helpful, to say the least. PTOs are a little bit more independent. If you don't know what those are, a PTA is the Parent Teacher Association. It's part of a national organization that has an agenda I don't agree with. PTOs are independent at each school, and so it's more localized. There's no national agenda behind a PTO. And so I'd get involved with that if you just want to be involved in your school. Now, if you want to engage at the higher level, go to Google and look up when your next school board meeting is in your community and drive yourself down there and have a seat. I promise you, you will be you'll be educated and informed. My very first school board meeting, when I thought about running for school board, was the first time I ever heard of a furry. There was a mom and a child that was standing up at the podium, and the mom was mad because her daughter got a code violation on the dress code. And she said it was unacceptable. It was inhibiting her personality and all of these things. And I was like, I just kept thinking, what was this child wearing that was so worthy of this whole thing going on at a school board meeting? And then her daughter stood up and she had a tail, like a big furry long tail on. And my mouth dropped and my eyes were opened. And the mom was fighting for the child to be able to wear the tail in school. And I just thought, oh my goodness, I think we have some problems in education in America. And that was in probably 2014 or 2015.
Oh, wow. That is not, I thought you were going to say that significantly more recently. That
No,
is, wow. Okay.
it's
So,
been going
what,
on a long time.
yeah, clearly. Well, and I think that's really a good point that it's, that's one reason why it's so important for people to pay attention now because the things that we're just seeing in culture have been dripping through the system for a very long time. This is not recent stuff. It's just now all of a sudden a lot more out there. It's getting a lot more attention, but it's been going on for quite a while. All right. Any final tips or advice or suggestions that you would have for parents both on the getting involved and or getting engaged?
Of course, of course. The number one way to get engaged is to go to momsforliberty.org. Of course, I would plug that. Visit our website, sign up to get our newsletter at a minimum. There's a big map on there. You could go take a look. If we have a chapter, your county will be gold, which means the light is on and people are plugged in and awake. And if your county is still navy, it means you don't even have a chapter yet. So you can start a chapter by clicking on it. You can join your chapter if it's gold by clicking on it. There's a lot of opportunities to get engaged and involved, and we invite you to join us.
I agree. That is exactly what I was going to say when you said go attend the school board meeting and then go over to momsforliberty.org and look for your county so that you can get involved with us too, because then you're not doing it alone. That's what's so fantastic for people to remember, because some of this stuff can seem very strange and overwhelming potentially, but it's not as overwhelming when you're doing it with such a great group of people supporting you. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate hearing from you on the tips from someone who is right there literally doing it all between being involved and getting engaged. It's great to hear the different perspectives. So thank you so much.
It was good to be with you, Missy.
What an inspiring and energizing conversation. I mean, I can't say that I'm surprised that Tina started by logging thousands of volunteer hours before going on to found a national movement, but she really reminded us that being an engaged and involved parent isn't about perfection. It's about persistence, purpose, and sometimes simply showing up. And remember, that might look a little different for everyone. You may not be able to attend a class party during the school day, especially if you work during that time. But there are always other options for how to help and get involved. Start with small steps of just reaching out to the teacher and see what you can do to help. I also strongly encourage you attending your school board meetings. Now, I can't promise that they're always going to be as interesting as a parent advocating for furry acceptance, but you will learn a lot nonetheless. So whether you're peeling potatoes with your kids or attending your first school board meeting, just remember that every step matters. So start small, stay consistent, and remember, your voice matters, your presence matters, and your kids are worth it. So if you're ready to take that first step and get engaged, well, head on over to momsforliberty.org to find or start a chapter in your area. So if you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure you tune in tomorrow for the live stream featuring two amazing chapter chairs as they share more on getting engaged and being involved while also doing some pretty incredible advocacy work. You can check it out at our Moms for Liberty YouTube channel, or of course, register at M4Lacademy.org to get reminders of the event as well. And then a little teaser for you on some upcoming topics. So we're wrapping up our back to school series in August. Starting in September, we're going to dive into MAHA at schools. That'll look like school lunches and some talking about vaccination requirements and what your options are for maybe some healthier choices. Then in October, we're going to move over to look at EdTech, data collection, and AI, and what a rabbit hole that is. Then we'll move on to social media, gaming. You're not going to want to miss any of what we're bringing you, some pretty incredible stuff. Because after all, at M4L Academy, our goal is to educate you on the issues and equip you with tools and resources, because we're building engaged citizens, not enraged activists. As James Madison said, the advancement and diffusion of knowledge is the only true guardian of liberty, and that is the mission of M4L Academy. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time.